Okay, so step two, what we need to do is keep track of a list of tasks. And on one activity, we're going to be adding to the list of tasks, and on the main activity, the first activity, we're going to be displaying that list of tasks. So what we need is some way to sort of share that data. We could pass around a list between the two activities, but if we add a third activity that needs access to that list, that's going to get kind of cumbersome to maintain. So there needs to be this sort of third party somewhere where we keep the list. And what that's going to be is an application. And that will hold the task list for the whole application, which is what its job is. We can extend the application to do some application lifecycle things, as you'll see, but also to act as a way for sort of application-wide information to be stored and shared. So an Android application class, in this sense, not a or an object, an instance of an Android application class, is the class that sits around, and there is one for your application. It stays in memory for the whole time your application is around. Any activity can get easy access to it, and it is a good place to share this kind of data. So what we're going to do for this step is create an application class, and it will have a list of tasks, and it will provide a way to add a task. And I will also create a task at that point too. So let me clean up my workspace here just a little bit. What I'm going to do is open up my Package Explorer and come here to the package that we have set up, the Task Manager package, and say New Class. And I want to call this Task Manager Application. The superclass will be Application. If I hit Control Space, you can see one of the completion options is android.app.application, and that's what we want. And I hit Finish because that's all we need. And now we have a new Task Manager application class. So just creating this isn't enough to get it actually to be the class that gets used when our application starts. We have to open up the manifest and make a quick change there. So I'm going to open up our manifest file again. And you'll notice again there's a manifest at the top that does sort of, application-wide stuff, but then you may have noticed before that there is an application tag, and that's exactly where we can do things like this, which is to give that guy a name. I'm going to copy in some code here. Now I've named this just like I would name an activity to be the class name, again prefixed with the dot because that goes against the pack manager. The package here, the Task Manager package, O'Reilly Android Task Manager dot Task Manager application. Now Android will run this application, and instead of instantiating its own its instance of android.app.application, it will instantiate your application instead and put that through all the lifecycle paces that an application can go through. So if I come back here and go to Source and go to Override or Implement Methods, you can see the different methods that application defines. One is on configuration changed, which is an orientation type thing. So if you change from landscape to portrait, however your device does that, this will get called. That's not something we're going to deal with today, but you can see that there's other two more basic methods. One is on create, and another is on terminate. So the application will get notified when it is created, just like an activity does, and also when it's terminated, so that you can do some sort of cleanup stuff. And there's also an on low memory warning, which will get called if the memory starts to run out. But all we're going to need today is the on create, so I'm going to click this and say OK, and now we'll have an on create method inside our application. Okay, so on create, what we want to do for this iteration is just to set up a list of tasks. Later on in other iterations, we're going to do some more interesting content, some like getting this out of a local database to be more specific. But every time the application starts here, we're gonna create a new array list of tasks. So I've copied in some code to save a little time. What I want this to be is an array list of an item called tasks. So I'm going to import array list, and I want to have a local variable, a field called current tasks, which point to array lists. So now I have that set up here. And there just remains one thing to do, and that is to create the task. So I'm going to hover over task and say create task, and I want to put that in a package called tasks to kind of keep that separate. And I want the superclass to just be object and the name to be task. And so I'm all set up. This is just a data object. This is a plain old Java object, POJO. Some people might have heard it called. Nothing special about it. All it's going to do is hold some data for us. Let me copy in the code. Sorry, go ahead.
All you did there was just like you had used Eclipse to help you create the activity, you just used it to help you create the class task that you needed.
Yep, maybe I should go through and after I do that to show the code that was generated, but I actually created this package, com.o'reilly.android taskmanager.tasks, and this Java file with this tasks class inside of it, that was all created by me going through and saying create that class. That's just how Eclipse School saved me a little bit of time, a little bit of typing. Okay, so I'm going to paste in the code here, which will save some time and then discuss it afterwards. So a task is a very simple beast right now. It just has a name, which is a string, and then it has the sort of Java Bean type setup, set name, get name, public accessors to this private field, and then I've also, as a convenience, set up a constructor so you can create a task with the name. And then there's a toString which just returns the name, which is a little bit nicer than we'll use that when we display the list. So now we have this task object. The application should be a little bit happier once we import this. So I'm going to hover over this and say import task. And now everything's happy. There's no more errors over here in the gutter on the left. And if I collapse those imports, now you can see that on create, our application is going to set up a list of tasks. And that will just be a blank list of tasks right now that will be able to hold instances of the object or of the class task. But there's one other thing we need to do, and that's provide a way for other objects, whatever it may be. Usually in our case it's going to be some activities to get hold of those tasks. So I'm going to copy in some accessor methods here. Set current tasks, get current tasks, which will return the array list. And then also I'm going to provide a way for other objects to add a task, and that will be in a method called add task, which I will paste in here at the bottom. Add task will just take a task and make sure it's not null, and then it will set up the array list if it's not already set up. I guess that's just sort of a little bit of defensive coding I did that may be a little too much, but in any case, when that's set up, current tasks array list, I can add that task into that array list and then it will be set up. So now we have the application set up to the point where it will manage a list of tasks for us, which is exactly what we need. So now that we've set that up, let's look at the steps that we have yet to do. We've got an application class. The Android manifest is set up so that it will be instantiated when we set up our application to run, and it has a list of tasks, and it provides a way to add that task. So that's pretty much all we need for this step. That was a good quick step. And then, by the way, here are the files that I added. This time we've added the Task Manager application, but I also added that task class. So now we have a task class which will hold the data for a single task, and the Task Manager application holds the collection of tasks that the application needs to use. Do we have any questions about that? Let me switch back to some code.
Guessing we probably do. We'll give them a second to ask. One person did ask if there's any multi-threading issues that need to be taken into account with shared resources.
Yeah, it depends. It's possible to spin off threads that may access the shared resource. So you could synchronize it if you wanted to. I don't think that would hurt anything. In our case, I'm just expecting to do one thing at a time per activity. So only one activity can be manipulated by the user at one time, so I'm not too worried about synchronizing access to this task list.
Okay, and then a couple people asked about how Android knows the first activity to use, and that comes from the manifest, is that right?
Yep, we went over that last week fairly briefly, but let me go over it again. Inside the manifest, inside the application, inside the activity tag that is your default activity, you put these intent filters, and Eclipse did this for us when we generated the project. But the intent filter of with the category of Android intent category launcher is the one that will be set up when the application is first run. And this action, Android intent action main, is the one that says this is the main one for this application. And that's how that works.
We had a question about lazily creating the current tasks in the add task method. And I think the question was related to why you would lazily create them.
I don't know. I think this might have been some kind of leftover code. I'll get rid of this in case in case it's bothering anybody. I have some code that I have prepared beforehand, by the way, off screen, that I'm copying in just to save typing.